moment arrives quietly, but it feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. For years, you have protected yourself behind careful words and controlled expressions, hiding the fragile parts of your thoughts as if they were dangerous secrets. You learned early that silence could feel safer than honesty. You learned that revealing too much could invite judgment, laughter, or rejection. But now something inside you has begun to change. The walls around your identity have already started to crack, and behind those walls, something real is trying to breathe. The question that follows you everywhere now is simple yet terrifying. What would happen if you stopped hiding? The morning air is cool as you step outside. The city stretches before you with its usual rhythm of movement and noise. Cars move along crowded streets. People hurry past with determined expressions, and the familiar sounds of everyday life echo between tall buildings. From the outside, nothing looks unusual, yet you feel as if you are walking through a completely different world. Every face you pass seems to carry a story you cannot see. Every conversation hides emotions that are rarely spoken aloud. For most of your life, you believed the safest way to exist in this world was to protect yourself by keeping your inner thoughts hidden. But the idea you discovered earlier, the possibility that imperfection might not be weakness, has already changed the way you see things. You arrive at work and sit among the quiet hum of computers and conversations. The environment is the same as always. People discussing tasks, exchanging polite greetings, focusing on responsibilities that shape their daily routines. Yet today, something feels different inside you. The old instinct to maintain perfect control is still there, but another voice is growing stronger. It encourages you to be honest, even if honesty feels uncomfortable. At first, the idea seems small. Perhaps you could simply speak more openly in conversations, sharing opinions that you once kept silent. But as the day moves forward, the challenge becomes larger. During lunch, you sit with a few colleagues, listening as the conversation shifts from work to personal experiences. Someone talks about stress from balancing career and family. Another person mentions doubts about their future plans. Normally, you would respond with supportive but distant comments, careful not to reveal too much about your own life. But today, something pushes you gently toward a different choice. The opportunity appears in a simple question directed at you. Someone asks how you have been feeling lately, not just about work, but about life in general. For a moment, the old fear rises inside your chest. Your mind searches quickly for the safe answer, the familiar response that reveals nothing personal. You could smile and say everything is fine. You could shift the conversation away from yourself. But the new voice inside your mind whispers another possibility. It reminds you of the journey you have started, the walls you have already begun to dismantle. Slowly, you decide to try something different. Your voice feels slightly uncertain as you speak, and you admit that you have been questioning many things about your life lately. You mention the pressure you sometimes feel to appear confident and successful, even when you are unsure about your direction. The words leave your mouth, and for a brief moment, the room feels unusually quiet. You wait for the reaction you feared for so long, but instead of judgment, you see understanding in the faces around you. One person nods slowly and admits they often feel the same pressure. Another person shares a story about a time when they struggled with similar doubts. The conversation grows deeper, more honest, more real. Suddenly, the room feels warmer than before, as if a hidden barrier between people has quietly disappeared. The experience surprises you more than you expected. Instead of rejection, your honesty creates connection. The vulnerability you once believed was dangerous becomes a bridge between you and others. As the conversation continues, you realize that everyone carries hidden fears and uncertainties. They simply wait for someone brave enough to speak about them first. Later that evening, you walk through the city with a different feeling inside your chest. The streets glow under the soft light of street lamps, and the sounds of the city feel calmer now. You think about the moment earlier when you allowed yourself to be vulnerable. It was not dramatic or heroic, yet it changed something important in the way you see the world. Vulnerability did not weaken you. Instead, it allowed you to experience something deeper than the shallow interactions you were used to. Over the following days, you begin experimenting with this new approach to life. The changes are small at first. You speak more honestly about your thoughts during conversations. You admit when you are uncertain instead of pretending to have all the answers. You share stories from your past that you once considered too personal to mention. Each time you reveal something genuine about yourself, you feel the familiar fear rising for a moment. But again and again, the reaction surprises you. Instead of pushing people away, vulnerability seems to invite them closer. One evening, you meet an old friend at a quiet cafe. The warm lights and soft music create a peaceful atmosphere as people talk quietly around you. During your conversation, the topic turns toward personal struggles and life choices. In the past, you might have avoided discussing your deeper fears, but now you feel the courage to speak openly. You tell your friend about the pressure you once felt to be perfect, about the constant comparison that made you believe you were not good enough, about the exhausting effort of trying to live up to expectations that never truly felt like your own. Your friend listens carefully without interrupting. When you finish speaking, they smile gently and say something that stays with you long after the conversation ends. They tell you that honesty like this is rare and that it makes conversations feel real rather than superficial. They admit they have been struggling with their own fears, but never felt comfortable sharing them until now. The moment feels powerful because it reveals something you had never fully understood before. Vulnerability creates space for truth, and truth creates connection. As the days continue, you begin noticing how different life feels when you stop hiding behind the mask you once relied on. Interactions become more meaningful, conversations become more sincere, and relationships begin to deepen in ways you never expected. The fear of being seen does not disappear completely, but it becomes easier to face. Each act of honesty weakens the power that fear once held over you. Yet beneath this growing sense of connection, another realization begins forming quietly in your mind. Vulnerability is powerful, but it also requires courage every single time you choose it. Each moment of honesty exposes a piece of your true self to the world, and not everyone will respond with understanding. The connections you have experienced so far have been encouraging, but somewhere in the world there will always be people who do not welcome vulnerability. As you walk through the city one night, watching the reflections of lights dancing across rain-soaked streets, a new thought enters your mind. What will happen when your honesty meets someone who does not respond with kindness? The question lingers in the air like a shadow waiting for the right moment to appear, because the journey toward authenticity does not only reveal the beauty of human connection, it also exposes you to the harsh reality that not everyone is ready to see the truth you are beginning to share. And soon, sooner than you expect, that reality will test the courage you have only just begun to discover. Something inside you begins to change long before anyone else notices it. At first it feels small, almost invisible, like the first crack forming in a frozen lake at the end of winter. You cannot hear the ice breaking yet, but you can feel the pressure building beneath the surface. For most of your life, your words have been carefully measured, filtered through invisible rules that were never written but always obeyed. Speak politely, agree when possible, do not say anything that might disturb the fragile peace of approval. It became so natural that you stopped noticing the mask entirely. You believed that mask was simply who you were, but now something is shifting, slowly, quietly, in ways that make your heart beat a little faster when you notice it. The strange thing is that it doesn't feel like learning something new. It feels more like remembering something old, something buried beneath years of silence. Your real voice. The morning air feels different these days when you step outside. The city still moves with the same rhythm, people rushing across sidewalks, car engines humming, distant conversations drifting through open cafe doors. But you are no longer just observing it from behind the glass of your careful personality. You feel present in a way that makes every sound sharper, every color more vivid. For the first time in years, you feel the quiet electricity of possibility running through your thoughts. It started with small things, tiny acts that no one else would even notice. One afternoon at work, someone asked for your opinion during a meeting. Normally, you would hesitate, searching for the safest possible answer. But this time, something different happens. The familiar pause appears, and then you speak anyway. Your voice sounds strange to your own ears at first, like a sound that hasn't been used in a very long time. You hear yourself say what you actually think instead of what you believe others want to hear. The room grows quiet for a moment, not hostile, just surprised. You feel your pulse beating in your throat, but then something unexpected happens. The world doesn't collapse. No one attacks you. No one laughs. The conversation simply continues. Someone nods thoughtfully. Another person adds their own perspective. And suddenly the moment passes like any other ordinary discussion. Yet inside you, something enormous has shifted. It was such a simple thing, just a sentence spoken honestly. But to you, it feels like standing up after years of sitting in a cage. Later that evening, you walk through the city streets with a strange mixture of excitement and disbelief swirling in your chest. The sky is fading into deep shades of purple and gold. Streetlights flicker on one by one, glowing softly like small suns in the gathering darkness. You replay the moment in your mind again and again. You expected danger, rejection, judgment, but instead, nothing catastrophic happened at all. It was as if you stepped outside a prison door only to discover the walls were never locked. The realization is both liberating and terrifying, because if the cage was never truly locked, then you have been the one holding the key all along. Over the following days, the experiment continues. Not intentionally at first. It simply happens in quiet moments where your old patterns begin to loosen their grip. Someone makes a joke that you don't actually find funny, and instead of forcing a polite laugh, you simply smile and remain silent. A friend asks how you are doing, and instead of answering with the automatic, I'm fine, you pause for a moment and tell the truth. Honestly, I've been thinking about a lot of things lately. The words feel raw and unfamiliar leaving your mouth, but they also feel strangely powerful. Each honest sentence feels like taking another step out of the shadows. Each moment of authenticity feels like breathing fresh air after living in a sealed room for years. But authenticity is not comfortable. Not at first. Every time you speak from that deeper place inside you, a small voice of fear still whispers warnings in the background. What if they don't like the real you? What if honesty pushes people away? These thoughts appear like dark clouds on the horizon, threatening to pull you back into old habits. Yet something stronger is growing within you now, a quiet determination. The more you allow your real thoughts and feelings to surface, the more natural it begins to feel. It is as if your voice has been waiting patiently all these years, gathering strength in the darkness. Now that it has a chance to exist, it refuses to disappear again. One evening, you find yourself sitting across from an old friend in a small cafe. The warm light of hanging lamps glows against the wooden tables. Rain taps softly against the windows while people murmur in quiet conversations around you. Your friend leans forward, studying your face carefully. You seem different lately, they say slowly. The comment hangs in the air like a question neither of you fully understands. For a moment, you consider giving the usual safe answer. The familiar mask waits patiently, ready to slide back into place. But instead, you take a slow breath and speak honestly. I think I've spent most of my life trying to be who everyone else expected, you say. Your voice is calm but steady, and lately, I'm starting to realize I don't want to do that anymore. The words feel heavy with meaning, like stones dropping into deep water. Your friend blinks, surprised by the seriousness of your tone. So who do you want to be? They ask quietly. You look down at the swirling steam rising from your cup of tea. The truth is, you don't fully know yet. But for the first time in your life, that uncertainty doesn't scare you. I'm still figuring that out, you admit, but I want it to be real. Outside the cafe, the rain begins falling harder, washing the streets in shimmering reflections of neon lights and passing headlights. As you walk home that night, something inside you feels lighter than it has in years. The old voice that demanded perfection and approval is still there, but it is no longer the only voice guiding your life. Another presence has emerged beside it, calm, grounded, and deeply honest. Your authentic self. It does not shout. It does not force attention. It simply exists quietly, waiting for you to trust it. And the more you listen, the clearer it becomes. But authenticity has consequences. The more you speak from your real thoughts and feelings, the more certain patterns in your life begin to shift. Some conversations become deeper and more meaningful, others become uncomfortable. A few people seem confused by the change, as if they preferred the easier version of you that always agreed and never challenged anything. You begin to realize something important. When you change, the world around you must adjust as well. Some connections grow stronger, others begin to crack under the weight of honesty. Late one night, you sit alone in your room, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating the quiet space around you. The city outside has fallen mostly silent. You reflect on the strange journey unfolding inside your life. For so long, you believed your voice was something fragile and dangerous, something that needed to be hidden or carefully controlled. But now you see it differently. Your voice is not a weapon or a weakness. It is simply the sound of your existence, the way your inner world meets the outer one, the way your truth enters reality. You whisper a single sentence into the quiet room just to hear it out loud. This is who I am. The words feel powerful in their simplicity, but deep down you also sense something else stirring beneath the surface of your new confidence. Because every transformation invites resistance, every step toward authenticity challenges the expectations of the world around you. And while your voice has finally begun to emerge from the shadows, the forces that once kept it silent have not disappeared completely. Somewhere beyond the fragile peace you have started to build, doubt is gathering again. Old fears are watching, waiting for the moment when your courage falters. And very soon, you will discover that finding your true voice is only the beginning. Because the moment you stop pretending, the world begins testing whether you truly have the courage to remain yourself. It begins quietly, not with a loud warning or a dramatic collapse, but with a whisper so subtle you almost mistake it for your own thoughts. For a few brief weeks, life has felt different, lighter, as if some invisible weight has finally lifted from your chest. You have started speaking honestly. Your voice, once buried beneath years of caution, has begun to move through the world with surprising strength. Conversations feel real now. Your words no longer hide behind polite masks or carefully constructed personalities. For the first time in your life, you feel something close to freedom. But freedom, you are about to discover, has enemies, and they do not always appear immediately. The morning sky is pale and gray when the first crack appears. Clouds stretch across the horizon like thin scars, dimming the sunlight that tries to push through. The city is waking slowly, wrapped in the cold breath of early wind. You step outside your apartment building and pause for a moment, inhaling the sharp air. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn echoes through the streets. Cars pass by in low murmurs. Everything looks the same as it did yesterday. But inside you, something feels unsettled. At first, you cannot explain it. Your chest feels tight, like the quiet tension before a storm arrives. You brush the feeling away and begin walking toward work, telling yourself it's just another day. But the whisper returns. Are you sure this is a good idea? The thought appears suddenly, slipping into your mind with unsettling familiarity. You frown slightly as you cross the street, trying to focus on the rhythm of your footsteps against the pavement. Over the past few weeks, you have grown used to speaking your mind. At meetings, you share your opinions. With friends, you admit when something bothers you instead of pretending everything is fine. It has felt powerful, almost exhilarating. Yet now the old voice, the one you thought you had left behind, has returned, creeping slowly through your thoughts like fog sliding across a dark valley. People liked you better before, the whisper continues. Before you started changing, you stopped briefly at a traffic light, watching the red signal glow against the dull morning sky. The words linger in your mind longer than you want them to. You remember the quiet version of yourself, the one who never challenged anything, the version of you that everyone described as easygoing and nice. For years, that version kept you safe. No arguments, no uncomfortable confrontations, just quiet approval from the people around you. But lately, that version has been fading, and the world is beginning to notice. At work, the tension becomes clearer. The office lights flicker softly above rows of desks and glowing computer screens. Conversations hum through the air like distant machinery. You greet a few coworkers as you pass by, but their smiles seem slightly different today, polite, yet uncertain. You sit down at your desk and open your laptop, trying to ignore the growing pressure in your chest. The whisper returns again. What if they don't like the new you? A meeting begins later that morning. The conference room feels colder than usual, the air thick with the scent of coffee and printed paper. People gather around the long table, exchanging casual remarks while waiting for the discussion to start. You sit quietly, observing them the way you once did before you began speaking more openly. But now something feels different. There is an invisible tension beneath the surface of the room, like a fragile thread stretched too tightly between people. The manager begins discussing a new project. Ideas bounce back and forth across the table. Eventually, the familiar moment arrives. The moment when someone asks for your opinion. Only a few weeks ago, you would have stayed silent. But today, you speak calmly, clearly. You share your thoughts about the direction of the project, explaining why you believe a certain approach might lead to better results. For a moment, the room grows quiet, not hostile, but heavy. Someone shifts in their chair. Another person glances down at their notes. The manager nods slowly, considering your suggestion. That's an interesting perspective, they say carefully. The conversation continues, but the atmosphere has changed slightly, like a subtle shift in gravity. Later, as people leave the meeting room, you overhear fragments of quiet conversation behind you. He's been more outspoken lately. Yeah, it's kind of surprising. The words aren't cruel. They are not even openly critical, but they carry a tone you recognize immediately: uncertainty. The world you were once part of, the comfortable system where everyone understood their roles, is adjusting to the presence of your real voice, and adjustments are rarely smooth. The whisper grows louder that evening as you walk home beneath the fading light of sunset. Orange clouds burn across the sky while the city glows beneath them. Normally, the sight would calm you, but tonight your thoughts are restless. Maybe you went too far. Maybe people preferred the old version of you. You stop near a small park where wind rustles through the trees. Children laugh somewhere in the distance while streetlights begin flickering on. For a moment, you feel caught between two worlds. One is familiar, the safe silence you lived in for so many years. The other is new and unpredictable, the world where you speak honestly and risk being misunderstood. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. A message from a friend appears on the screen. You've been acting different lately. Everything okay? You stare at the message longer than necessary. The question seems simple, but it carries an invisible weight. Different. The word echoes in your mind like a distant bell. Different means change, and change makes people uncomfortable. The whisper inside you grows sharper now. See? They're noticing. Soon they'll start pulling away. You begin walking again, but your steps feel slower, heavier than before. For the first time since discovering your authentic voice, doubt spreads through your thoughts like dark ink in water. What if authenticity really does cost you something? What if honesty pushes people away instead of bringing them closer? That night, you sit alone in your apartment, staring out the window at the glittering lights of the city. Cars move like glowing insects along distant streets. Somewhere far below, music drifts faintly through the night air. The world continues moving as it always has. But inside you, a storm is forming. The voice of fear, the one that ruled your life for so many years, has not disappeared. It has simply been waiting for the moment when your courage begins to grow, waiting for the moment when it can strike again. You close your eyes and breathe slowly, trying to steady the rising tension in your chest. Part of you wants to retreat, to step back into the safety of silence where no one questions you and no one feels uncomfortable around you. But another part of you, the new voice, the authentic one, refuses to disappear so easily. The battle inside your mind has returned, and this time it is stronger than ever, because now you understand exactly what is at stake. Authenticity is not just about speaking your truth. It is about risking everything that once made you feel safe. Outside, the wind begins to rise, rattling the windows softly as clouds gather across the dark sky. Somewhere in the distance, thunder murmurs like a warning. You stare into the night with a growing realization forming slowly in your mind. Finding your voice was only the beginning. The real test is still coming. And very soon, you will face a moment where the world forces you to choose between acceptance and truth. A moment where speaking honestly might cost you more than you ever imagined. The moment arrives without warning, not with thunder, not with dramatic music like in the movies. It arrives quietly, disguised as an ordinary day, the kind of day you have lived 1,000 times before. The sky outside your window is pale and washed with morning light. The city moves through its familiar rhythm, buses groaning along crowded streets, distant horns echoing between tall buildings, footsteps passing along the sidewalks like waves moving through an endless ocean of people. Everything appears normal, predictable, safe. But deep inside your chest, something feels different. There is a tension in the air around you, subtle but unmistakable, like the stillness before a storm begins to gather its strength. You wake earlier than usual that morning. Sleep had been restless, your mind drifting between uneasy dreams and half-conscious thoughts. As you sit up in bed, the quiet room feels heavier than usual. The pale sunlight creeping through the curtains paints soft patterns across the floor, but it does nothing to ease the strange weight pressing against your thoughts. You already know why. Somewhere deep down, a quiet understanding has formed overnight. Today will test you, not in the obvious ways you might expect. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting voices or open hostility. The test will be quieter than that, more personal, the kind of moment that reveals who you truly are. When no one else can see the battle happening inside your mind, you stand and walk toward the mirror hanging on the wall. Your reflection stares back at you, tired but alert. For a long time, that reflection was someone you barely recognized, a carefully constructed version of yourself designed to please the world around you. The polite smile, the agreeable silence, the mask that kept everything smooth and comfortable. But lately, that mask has begun to crack. And now, the world is starting to notice. We splash cold water on your face and dress slowly, the quiet apartment echoing with small sounds, fabric shifting, the faint creak of the floor beneath your steps, the distant murmur of the city beyond the window. Every movement feels deliberate today, as if your body senses the weight of what lies ahead even before your mind fully understands it. Outside, the air is cool and restless. Clouds stretch across the sky like long gray shadows, dimming the morning sun. Wind moves between the buildings, carrying fragments of conversation and the smell of coffee from a nearby cafe. The world continues its routine without hesitation, unaware of the invisible crossroads forming in your life. As you walk toward work, the whisper of fear returns. It had faded slightly over the past few days, retreating into the corners of your mind where doubt usually hides. But now it rises again, slow and persistent. You don't have to do this, it murmurs quietly. You could go back to the way things were. The voice is calm, almost comforting. It reminds you of the safety you once lived in, the predictable life where no one questioned you, where every interaction was smooth because you carefully shaped yourself to fit other people's expectations. That life had its advantages: approval, belonging, peace, but it also had a cost. You remember that cost clearly now, the quiet emptiness that followed you everywhere, the feeling that your life was unfolding on a stage where you played a character instead of living as yourself. You shake the thought away and continue walking. By the time you reach the office building, the tension inside your chest has grown stronger. The glass doors slide open with a soft, mechanical hum, and you step into the familiar world of fluorescent lights and echoing footsteps. People greet each other casually in the hallway. Morning. Hey, how's it going? The routine feels normal on the surface, but beneath it you sense something else moving quietly between the conversations. A subtle awareness, the same awareness you noticed days ago during the meeting when your honesty surprised everyone. You are no longer invisible, and visibility changes everything. At your desk, you try to focus on work, but concentration slips through your fingers like sand. Your thoughts drift constantly toward the same uneasy realization: authenticity is not always welcomed. Sometimes people prefer the version of you that stays quiet. Sometimes they feel safer when you agree with them. And when you stop playing that role, the balance begins to shift. The defining moment arrives later that afternoon. Another meeting, another long table surrounded by familiar faces. The discussion begins normally, moving through reports and updates until the conversation turns toward a decision that everyone seems ready to accept without question. Except you. You feel it immediately, that quiet resistance inside your chest. The same instinct that has been growing stronger since you began listening to your authentic voice. Something about the plan feels wrong. You glance around the room, people nod casually, eager to move forward. The decision would be easier if you simply stayed silent. The old version of you would have done exactly that. But now the question forms slowly in your mind. If you stay silent, what happens to the person you're becoming? The room grows quieter as the manager asks if anyone has concerns. No one speaks. Your heart begins to pound. The whisper of fear returns instantly. Don't do it. This will only make things harder. For a moment, you almost listen. You can feel the mask waiting patiently, ready to slide back into place. One moment of silence would restore everything to the way it used to be: approval, comfort, belonging. But then another voice rises within you, quieter, stronger, your real voice. You take a slow breath and begin to speak. Your words cut gently through the silence of the room, calm but firm as you explain your concerns. You are not attacking anyone. You are simply telling the truth as you see it. For several seconds after you finish, the room remains completely still. No one interrupts. No one laughs. But the atmosphere changes instantly, like the sudden shift in air pressure before a storm breaks. A few people exchange glances. Someone clears their throat. The manager leans back slightly, studying you with an expression that is difficult to read. You feel strongly about this, they say slowly. You nod. Yes. Another pause. Then someone across the table sighs quietly. Well, that definitely complicates things. The words are not cruel, but they carry a weight that settles heavily across the room. In that moment, you realize something important. Authenticity does not always bring applause. Sometimes it brings distance. As the meeting ends, people gather their papers and leave the room. Conversations start again, but they sound different, now quieter, more cautious. You walk down the hallway alone, the echo of your footsteps bouncing off the walls. The whisper of fear returns one more time. Was it worth it? You stop near the window overlooking the city. Outside, the sky has darkened. Heavy clouds roll across the horizon, turning the afternoon light into a dull gray shadow. You stand there for a long moment, watching the wind move through the streets below. For the first time since your journey began, you feel the full weight of what authenticity requires. It does not guarantee acceptance. It does not promise comfort. Sometimes it leaves you standing completely alone. But as you stare out at the approaching storm, another realization rises quietly within you. Even if the world turns away, even if the silence returns, you cannot go back to the person you used to be. The mask no longer fits, and somewhere beyond the darkening horizon, an even greater challenge is beginning to take shape. Because the storm gathering in the sky is not the only one approaching your life. Soon, you will face a moment that tests your courage in ways you have never imagined. A moment where standing alone may cost you more than you are prepared to lose. And when that moment arrives, you will discover whether authenticity is truly stronger than fear. It begins in the quiet after the storm, not the kind of storm that tears roofs from houses or floods the streets, but the quieter storm that lives inside your mind, the kind that rages between thoughts, between fear and courage, between the person you once were and the person you are slowly becoming. For days after the moment when you chose authenticity, when you spoke the truth even though it left you standing alone, you feel the aftershocks moving through your life. Conversations feel different now. Some people speak to you with new respect, while others seem distant, as if they are unsure who you have become. The old version of you would have panicked at that distance. The old version would have rushed to repair it, smoothing over any tension with apologies and polite agreement. But now something inside you has changed. You still feel the discomfort, of course. You still notice the quiet shifts in people's attitudes. Yet instead of scrambling to fix it, you find yourself asking a deeper question. What if being accepted by others is not the same as accepting yourself? One evening, you walk through the city long after the sun has disappeared. The streets are quiet now, washed in the golden glow of streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. Rain had passed through earlier, leaving the air cool and sharp. The sound of distant traffic drifts softly through the night like the echo of waves against a faraway shore. You move slowly, hands in your pockets, feeling the rhythm of your footsteps against the ground. For the first time in a long while, your mind is not racing with worry about what others think of you. Instead, your thoughts are turning inward. You begin revisiting memories you once tried to ignore, moments of embarrassment, mistakes you made years ago, words you wish you had never said. For most of your life, those memories carried a heavy weight of shame. Your inner critic, sharp, relentless, unforgiving, would replay those scenes again and again like a cruel judge delivering the same verdict. Not good enough. That voice has followed you for as long as you can remember. It whispered when you failed an exam as a teenager, telling you that smarter people would have done better. It mocked you when conversations went awkwardly, insisting that everyone noticed your flaws. It even appeared during your greatest achievements, reminding you that someone else could have done it better, faster, more perfectly. The critic was never satisfied. It demanded constant improvement, constant performance, constant proof that you deserved your place in the world. And for years, you believed that voice was necessary. You believed it was the force pushing you to become better. Without it, you feared you might become lazy or careless. But tonight, walking through the quiet city streets, you begin to question something that once felt unquestionable. What if that voice was never helping you at all? You stop near a small bridge overlooking the river that cuts through the center of the city. Dark water flows beneath it, reflecting broken fragments of light from buildings on the shore. The current moves steadily, carrying leaves and bits of debris toward places you cannot see. As you lean against the railing, a strange calm settles over your thoughts. For the first time in years, you allow yourself to look at your past, not through the harsh lens of judgment, but with curiosity. You begin remembering the younger version of yourself, the one who struggled quietly to meet expectations, the one who tried so hard to be perfect in order to earn approval. That younger self made mistakes, yes, said awkward things, failed at certain goals. But suddenly you see those memories from a different angle. You see the fear that shaped those choices, the pressure you felt to succeed, the loneliness of believing you had to handle everything alone. And slowly, an unexpected feeling begins to grow in your chest. Compassion. It feels unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable. For years, you trained yourself to respond to mistakes with criticism, as if punishment could somehow erase the past. But compassion is different. It does not demand perfection, it simply understands. As you stand there listening to the quiet rush of water beneath the bridge, a thought forms gently in your mind. You were always doing the best you could with what you knew at the time. The realization settles into your heart like warmth spreading through cold hands. The mistakes you once used as evidence against yourself begin to look different now. They are no longer proof of failure. They are proof of being human. The shift is subtle but powerful. Over the following days, you begin noticing how often that old inner critic tries to reappear. When you stumble over your words during a conversation, it whispers that you sounded foolish. When a project at work takes longer than expected, it suggests that you are falling behind. But instead of accepting those accusations as truth, you pause, you breathe, you listen carefully to the tone of that voice, and for the first time, you recognize how cruel it has always been. No friend would speak to you that way. No mentor would treat your mistakes with such harshness. So why did you allow yourself to do it for so long? You begin responding differently, not with anger, not with denial, but with patience. When the critic says you should have done better, another voice answers calmly, you are still learning. When it insists that your flaws make you weak, the new voice reminds you that every human being carries imperfections. Slowly, day by day, the balance inside your mind begins to shift. The critic does not disappear completely. It still appears from time to time, like an old habit refusing to fade. But its authority is gone. Its words no longer control the story you tell yourself. One afternoon, you find yourself sitting alone in a quiet cafe, watching sunlight filter through the large windows. Dust particles drift through the golden beams like tiny stars floating in space. Around you, people talk, laugh, scroll through their phones, or sit lost in their own thoughts. The ordinary rhythm of life continues, but something about the moment feels extraordinary. You realize that the tension you once carried everywhere, the constant pressure to prove your worth, has begun to loosen its grip. For the first time, you are not measuring yourself against every person who walks into the room. You are simply existing, breathing, being. A memory rises in your mind, then, clear and vivid, a time when someone once told you that your flaws made you difficult to understand. The words had stung deeply back then. You spent years trying to smooth those flaws away, believing that acceptance depended on becoming easier for others to handle. But now you see the truth hidden inside that painful moment. Those flaws were never the enemy. They were pieces of your story. The scars you carry, emotional and otherwise, are evidence of the battles you survived. They are proof that you have lived, struggled, and grown. The realization fills you with a quiet strength. Self-acceptance does not mean ignoring your weaknesses or pretending that growth is unnecessary. It means understanding that growth begins with honesty, not shame. When you accept your imperfections, they lose the power to control you. They become simply part of the landscape of your life, like mountains and valleys shaping the journey without defining its destination. Later that night, as you walk home beneath a sky scattered with stars, you notice something remarkable. The constant tension in your chest, the pressure that once followed you everywhere, has faded into something softer. In its place is a sense of spaciousness, as if your mind has opened a door that was locked for years. You realize that you no longer need to fight yourself. The war between who you are and who you thought you should be is slowly coming to an end. But as peaceful as this new freedom feels, a small awareness lingers at the edge of your thoughts. Accepting yourself is only one part of the journey. The world outside still carries expectations, judgments, and pressures that do not disappear simply because you have found inner compassion. Soon you will face another challenge, the challenge of carrying this new self-acceptance into a world that may not fully understand it. And as the cool night air brushes against your face while you walk through the quiet streets, a subtle question begins to form in your mind. If you can truly accept every part of yourself, what kind of life will you create next? It begins with a strange realization. Fear never truly disappears. For a long time, you believed courage meant reaching a place where fear no longer existed, a place where every step felt certain and every decision felt safe. But now, standing on the edge of a new chapter in your life, you understand something deeper. Fear is still there. It still whispers its warnings. It still raises questions in the quiet corners of your mind. The difference is that it no longer controls the direction of your steps. For years, it held the steering wheel of your life, guiding every decision towards safety, approval, and quiet invisibility. But now the wheel rests firmly in your hands. Fear rides beside you, but it no longer decides where you go. The morning sky stretches wide and clear above the city as you step outside your door. The air carries the crisp scent of a new day beginning, cool and full of possibility. Sunlight reflects off glass buildings and windows, scattering across the streets like shards of gold. People move through the sidewalks in familiar patterns. Workers heading toward offices, students laughing as they walk in groups, strangers passing each other without ever truly seeing one another. For most of them, this is just another ordinary morning. But for you, the world feels different, lighter, wider, as if the invisible walls that once surrounded your life have slowly dissolved. You walk through the city with a quiet awareness that something inside you has fundamentally changed. There was a time when every step you took felt like part of a performance. Every conversation required careful calculation. Every opinion had to be measured against the possible reactions of others. You lived inside a constant question: what will people think? That question shaped your voice, your behavior, even your dreams. It kept you small in ways you did not fully understand at the time. But the long journey you have traveled, the doubts, the confrontations, the lonely moments when authenticity cost you comfort, has slowly reshaped your inner world. Now, when you move through the crowd, you no longer feel the same pressure to hide pieces of yourself. Your thoughts feel clearer. Your voice feels steadier. Even the way you carry yourself has changed, though most people around you may not immediately notice it. It is not arrogance or defiance that fills you now. It is something quieter and far more powerful: permission. The permission to exist as you are. The realization deepens later that day during a conversation with someone who has known you for years. You are sitting together at a small cafe near the edge of the city. The room is warm with the smell of coffee and fresh bread, and sunlight pours through the large windows, painting soft patterns across the wooden tables. Outside, cars glide slowly past while people wander along the sidewalks. The ordinary rhythm of life continues without pause. Your friend studies you for a moment before speaking. "You seem different these days," they say slowly. Their tone is curious rather than critical, but you hear the underlying observation clearly: different. The word would have frightened you once. Being different meant standing out, inviting judgment, risking rejection. But now it carries a different meaning entirely. You smile slightly and take a sip of your drink before answering. "I think I finally stopped trying to be someone else," you say. The words feel simple, yet they carry the weight of years behind them. Your friend tilts their head thoughtfully. "So this is the real you?" You pause for a moment, considering the question carefully. The real you. For so long, that concept felt mysterious, almost unreachable. You spent years believing that the real you was hidden somewhere beneath layers of expectations and fears. But now you understand that authenticity is not a single perfect version of yourself waiting to be discovered. It is something more fluid, something that grows and evolves as you do. "I think I'm still discovering who that is," you reply quietly, "but at least now I'm not pretending anymore." The conversation continues, drifting through topics both small and meaningful. Yet beneath the casual words, you sense something important happening. The world is beginning to interact with the authentic version of you, not the carefully constructed mask you once presented. Some people will understand this new version. Others may struggle with it. But for the first time, their reactions no longer define your worth. Later that evening, you walk through a quiet park on your way home. The sun has already slipped below the horizon, leaving behind a deep blue sky scattered with the first faint stars. Wind rustles through the trees, carrying the soft sound of leaves brushing against one another like whispered conversations. The path beneath your feet curves gently through the darkened landscape, illuminated only by the occasional glow of street lamps. You remember the person you used to be when you walked these same paths months ago. The person weighed down by constant self-doubt, the person who believed that acceptance depended on being flawless, agreeable, and invisible. That version of you lived inside a prison built from expectations, some imposed by others, many created by your own fears. Now the gates of that prison stand open behind you. The journey was not easy. There were moments when speaking honestly cost you comfort, moments when standing alone felt unbearable, moments when the old voice of doubt tried desperately to pull you back into silence. But each time you chose authenticity, something inside you grew stronger. Courage, you have learned, is not loud. It does not always appear in dramatic confrontations or heroic gestures. Sometimes courage is simply telling the truth when silence would be easier. Sometimes it is allowing yourself to be seen exactly as you are, without decoration or disguise. You stop near a quiet pond at the center of the park. The water reflects the dark sky above, broken occasionally by ripples from the evening breeze. For a moment you simply stand there, watching your reflection shift and blur across the surface. The face looking back at you is familiar, yet different. It carries the same features you have always known, but there is something new in your eyes, now a calm steadiness that did not exist before. It is the look of someone who has stopped fighting themselves. And with that realization comes another quiet truth. The world may still challenge you. There will still be moments when fear appears, whispering its old warnings. But now you understand something essential. Fear cannot control a life that is guided by authenticity. As you turn away from the pond and begin walking again, a sense of quiet strength settles inside your chest. The mask that once defined your existence has fallen away completely. The road ahead is uncertain, but it belongs to you now. And somewhere beyond the darkness of the trees and the glowing lights of the city waiting in the distance, the final chapter of your journey is beginning to take shape, because discovering the courage to be yourself is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of the life you were always meant to live. It begins with a quiet realization that arrives one ordinary morning. The world outside your window is waking slowly, painted in soft shades of gold and pale blue as the first light of dawn spreads across the sky. The city moves through its familiar rhythm cars gliding along empty streets, distant footsteps echoing on sidewalks, the low murmur of life beginning again. Nothing about the scene feels dramatic or extraordinary. Yet something inside you has shifted so deeply that the world itself seems different, as if you are seeing it with new eyes for the first time. For most of your life, you believed freedom was something external, something granted by success, approval, or the acceptance of others. You believed that if you could simply become good enough, perfect enough, the world would open its doors to you. But standing there in the quiet morning light, you finally understand the truth you spent years searching for. Freedom was never waiting in the approval of the world. It was waiting in the courage to be yourself. Your journey to this moment was not simple. It did not arrive suddenly like a revelation falling from the sky. It grew slowly, painfully, through moments of doubt, fear, and quiet resistance. You remember the years when you wore the mask without even realizing it was there. The careful version of yourself designed to keep the peace, to fit comfortably into every room without disturbing anyone's expectations. At the time, it felt necessary. Survival demanded it.